Can you tell us about the journey you've been on the last few years, your family and your daughter in particular? If you can, go back to the start and just take us through that journey.
We had our second born, Tallulah, healthy young girl. We went off overseas. We went to Nicaragua. Our daughter was doing super well. She was hitting all of her developmental milestones. And then at the age of 14 months old, one day she seemed a bit lethargic. The second day, it got worse, and the third day, it was worse again. Maybe 3-4 days down the track, suddenly she couldn't even hold her own weight up. And within a 2-week period, she was basically, it seemed like she had no bones. She was just a blob. We're stuck in a third world country. We went to try and get medical help the best we could find. They didn't have many answers for us, but they had a big long list of tests they wanted to do on her. We're getting quite nervous about. So we started ringing Darwin, and we managed to get a hold of one of the best pediatricians in Darwin. And he asked us a series of questions, and by the end of it, you could tell he was shaking his head in the horror. What he said was just get on the next plane.
Hey guys, I was checking out our data for the last month and realized that over 90% of the people watching our videos are not yet subscribed. If you've ever found value in our videos or enjoyed the conversations, hit that subscribe button now. It really helps our channel more than you can imagine, and it's the only thing I'll ever ask from you. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Chris Whitrod, thanks very much for joining us on the NextGenNorth podcast.
Thanks for having me, Stuart.
Thanks for joining us on such short notice. I understand you're only in town for a few days. What's with the whirlwind trip back to Darwin?
Well, it's time for us to sell a house up here.
Okay.
We need some money very quickly, but all for a very exciting cause. So there's high emotion of selling and leaving the company. Selling the house.
Yep.
The house that our daughter was born in the lounge room. So there's lots of memories. We have a shed out the back full of boxes that also have lots and lots of memories. And so the Golden, my wife, keeps sending the kids down there to say, go down to the memory shed and see what you can find. But yeah, it's time for us to sell the house to make the money we need, because we're making a medicine.
Okay. So whereabouts in Darwin, where are you guys based? What suburb?
We're in Stuart Park.
Okay, that's where I am.
Awesome. We started in Fanny Bay when my wife and I got together. We rented in Fanny Bay, and within 2 days I realised that I had 2 friends that I grew up in high school with in Brisbane that were in the same street. It was amazing. I didn't think I knew anyone in Darwin. And so we lived there for a little while, had great time, loved it. And then eventually we ended up buying a house together and getting married and having kids in Darwin.
So how long have you been here for?
I've about 10 years. Yeah, 2 kids, 10 years, played rugby for far longer than my body deserved. But yeah, my wife was born here. Okay. So she's got an extended family. I've coming up from down south, I've never been a part of the concept of an extended family as big as my wife's, when she only actually has her mum and dad here. Okay. So what I mean is her parents arrived on a boat from America in their 20s as hippies. Wow. Lived on a beach like a lot of people after the cyclone, and helped to rebuild Darwin. And so everybody was helping each other. I have running water, so you guys can sleep in you put your tent up in our backyard. And they just established this community that was better than family. It was, and so when I met Golden's extended family, they're really strong aunties and uncles and cousins that I was jealous of such a big family. It was beautiful.
It sounds like they've got a story to tell, and might have to get them on the podcast.
They've got a huge story to tell. It's amazing. I love it.
Well, you play rugby, so I'm guessing you're either, if you're not from Darwin, you're probably from New South Wales or Queensland.
I'm Queensland born.
Okay. What can you tell us about sort of, life in Queensland before you came to the Territory?
Oh, life in Queensland. Okay, so I grew up in Brisbane. I went to a private school there, big school where you're a number, you weren't a person. So life was pretty good, but I was always travelling, trying to find where I fit in, where I wanted to be and who I was. Sure. Got to go overseas a fair bit, but travelled around in different places. And I guess it wasn't until I got to Darwin that I realised that I'm a small town person, because I love that proper contact, that personalize, that relationship that you build with people in small towns.
Yep.
Big towns, short conversation, just small talk and not a strong connection. But in a small town like Darwin, love it. The community spirit here, you can't beat it. And I miss it so much.
Yeah. So where are you now?
So recently we had to move down to Queensland because our little daughter has an ultra rare disease, and with that she needs a lot of therapy.
Okay.
We waited in line for 6 months in Darwin to get access to the therapist.
Right.
But even after that 6-month wait, the access we could get was only an hour a fortnight for the physio, once a fortnight for the speech, and a little bit of OT as well. And when you're dealing with little kids who need therapy, it's all about early intervention. Let's see if we can get as much improvement as we can in the early days, so that we can have as bigger impact as possible later in life.
Yeah. All right. I think that's something that we can touch on later on in the piece. But if you could, can you tell us about the journey you've been on the last few years, your family and your daughter in particular? If you can, go back to the start and just, take us through that journey.
Sure. Okay. So we have currently we've got a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. But our drama, I guess, started. Well, it wasn't so much a drama; it was dream days. We had our second born, Tallulah. She was birthed in our lounge room, as I said, in Stuart Park, at 4 months. When she healthy young girl. We went off overseas. We went to Nicaragua, which is a developing country, but it's a place where you can get a lot of sun and you can live quite affordably. You've been there?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It's a fantastic place.
Dream place.
Yeah.
But it is a developing country. You're around cows, beautiful beaches, and people and expats who don't mind getting off the beaten track.
Sure.
So we were over there in Nicaragua. Our daughter was doing super well. She was hitting all of her developmental milestones. And then at the age of 14 months old, she'd just got to the stage where she could push an empty cardboard box along.
Okay.
Developing countries, you don't have all those cool tools that we use to help kids walk.
Yep.
You use a cardboard box.
Use what you got around you, sort of thing.
That's right. And so she was pushing that through the dirt in Nicaragua, and everything was fantastic. And then one day she seemed a bit lethargic. Kids get sick, they slow down, and it's like, it's a hot day. She's lethargic. We'll give her a bit of extra time to rest. And the second day it got worse, and the third day it was worse again. So much so that she went from crawling everywhere really fast and trying to walk and standing up as often as she possibly could, to just sitting. And then from sitting, soon, maybe 3-4 days down the track, suddenly she couldn't even hold her own weight up. It's like, and within a 2-week period, she was basically it seemed like she had no bones. She was just a blob. And so we're stuck in a third world country. We went to try and get medical help as the best we could find.
Sure.
Drove the 3 hours into Managua. They didn't have many answers for us, but they had a big long list of tests they wanted to do on her. We're getting quite nervous about invasive tests. And,
right.
So we started ringing Darwin. And if we were living in any other state, any other city in Australia, it's super hard. You can't get a pediatrician on a phone from overseas when you're on holidays overseas. But in Darwin, we were connected, and we managed to get a hold of one of the best pediatricians in Darwin on the phone. And he asked us a series of questions, and by the end of it,
it's okay.
Yeah. So by the end of it, he you could tell he was shaking his head in the horror. Yeah. So what he said was, just get on the next plane.
when was this, if you don't mind? What?
This
what
would have
year
been.
was it?
Oh, so she's 5 now. She was 14 months old, so 4 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're words that you just don't want to hear. Now, I'm glad I didn't say his or her name, the pediatrician's name, because they're not allowed to give you this sort of advice over the phone.
Right.
But
we can edit it if we have to, for privacy reasons.
But I said, what do you think it is? What's we thought it might just be a tick that's sort of paralyzed her or just a bad flu. And and he said it could be a huge, it could be a big tumor on the brain.
Sure.
He said the thing that really got him was she had a bouncing leg. It wouldn't stop.
Right.
And he said, how many times does it bounce? And if it was over 5, it was bad. So kids do shuffle and bounce and stuff. But if this just kept vibrating up and down, it's like, mate, you've got to get home now. So we are in a developing country. They've got lots of planes that come in and out from Managua. That's 3.5 hours away. They'll get us home. We should be home 3 days from now. Problem was that COVID hit 2 months earlier. Everything was shut down, and every expat wanted to get out of Nicaragua. Where they were worried about just hospital. The very early days of it was panic in the world, and so they were worried that the hospitals were just going to get overrun. And
so basically, the worst time
to get out,
almost in your lifetime, that this could have unfolded.
That's right. Yeah. So. We knew, we'd heard stories that in Managua, you get about a 24-hour notice when the next plane comes, and every expat heads to Managua and sleeps on the street outside the airport trying to get their seat on it. So not cool.
Especially you got 2 kids, right?
Got 2 kids, really young, and one's very ill.
Yep.
So so lucky for us, we put out the words within the expat community. We're in, this is our situation. And someone knew someone who knew someone who knew someone. We didn't ask how far down the rabbit hole this went of knowing someone, but we ended up handing over our passports to a person we didn't know. And he said, give me 24 hours and I'll see what I can do. You never give away your passport, right? Especially when you desperately need to leave a country.
Sure. Yeah.
We're taking risks, and that's pretty much what our life has been like in the last 3.5 years, risk after risk after risk. But we handed over our passports, and 24 hours later, it was like we didn't know if the phone was going to ring or what was going to happen, but someone turned up at our street and going, we've got a plane for you. You need to be ready in 12 hours' time with no baggage. And so we were like, I don't know how you've done it. I asked them how much it was going to cost. They gave me a number in local currency, which I thought was in US dollars. So I thought it was going to cost something like $200,000. I said, we can't do that.
Yeah.
And I thought that's maybe what it costs to hire a plane, because I've never hired a plane. How much does a plane cost? Yeah. I don't know.
No. Who knows?
But we got through that. I think it was maybe $5,000 or something, maybe less than that.
Right.
But we got so that we turn up at an airport with just enough food for the kids and a couple of spare change of clothes, and this little pokey little plane lands. And have you ever seen that movie with Tom Cruise and he's doing drug runs through Central America?
I'm aware of it. It's just,
This guy, this pilot was Tom Cruise.
Right.
And the plane was straight out of that movie. And we are in Nicaragua where all the drug
We're not talking Maverick here. We're talking...
No, we're not talking, not Maverick. No. So this guy turns up. He's got his aviators on. He looks all of 21 years old. And so he's going to be our chauffeur to get out of the country. We were so excited that this is our chance to get home. That's all we needed all we wanted to do.
Yeah.
But getting up on this little tiny pokey plane, I was just waiting for the pilot to put it on autopilot,
Yeah.
walk back to us and start throwing dodgy packages out the window into the fields, into the rice fields. But that didn't happen. We did land in Panama Airport, and we got chauffeured into a back door of the airport behind customs, behind quarantine, and we just got delivered to the wait room for a flight to America. It's like there was some super connections that happened for us. I'll never know the extent of them. I'm probably not shouldn't ask questions.
Yeah, right. So you still don't know sort of what strings were pulled and who knew what and who greased who and best, ask no questions, you'll be told no lies, sort of thing. Yeah. So, but the main thing is you got to America.
We got to America. We got our passports back. We got to America. America was strange as well because our kids had spent half their life now in the jungle of Nicaragua, where there's monkeys and there's sloths and there's cows. There's not a lot of action except for a whole lot of wildlife. And we landed in America. We landed in 24 hours after the Black Lives Matters riot.
Okay.
So we're walking the streets and there's just the army everywhere with huge guns just patrolling everywhere. And our kids are freaking out. They've never seen, they've forgotten what other people are like. And,
sure.
And
in a place as chaotic as America as well. America's chaotic at the best of times.
It is.
But to land during those times, COVID, Black Lives Matter, it must have been, your mind must have just been spinning hard. And which city do you mind? Did you find yourselves in the States?
We land in Hollywood, which is what?
LA.
Yeah. Thank you. Forgotten. So it was in the heart of Black Lives Matter. That's where there was devastation and there was rubble. There was a lot of damage on the streets. So that was the epicenter of Black Lives Matter.
Sure.
And I guess that's such a change in our life. Like 3 weeks earlier, very cruisy, and this was just the beginning of what our life has sort of become over this time. It's like we don't care what is happening around us. This is crazy. We just have one focus.
Yep.
We need to get our daughter.
And 3 weeks before that, you sort of thought, we'll be in Nicaragua, we'll coast through COVID, we'll be eating bananas and fruit and living sort of modestly, but, Safely.
Yeah. We used to get fruit delivered to the front door, to the front of the driveway.
Right.
We'd wash fruit because that's what you did when COVID first hit. Everyone was panicked of everything. You'd leave it in the sun for a while, then you wash it with soap with gloves on.
And your mask on.
And then you bring it into and then after another 2 hours, then you might give it to the kids.
Right. So all that's gone out the window, and you're in America.
We're in America. We in this crazy situation of chaos, civil unrest in America, and all the time we're just in contact with our pediatrician back in Darwin. What he's doing is he's processing some of the test results that that we got in Nicaragua while we're waiting for that flight. So we got as many tests as we could possibly get. We didn't know how long we were going to get stuck in America. So let's just get as much information to our doctor to start processing so that from afar, from remotely, they might be able to start giving us some answers.
Yep.
And so that's what he's doing. I won't go into the detail of the test because it was a developing country and they don't have great, they don't have the most modern facilities.
Sure.
Or safety precautions either.
Yeah. I mean, I remember getting an injection for yellow fever when I was in Peru.
Yeah.
And, the language barrier was one thing. You didn't know the sort of hygiene standards. I made sure that I watched them take the needle out of the plastic, all that sort of stuff. I didn't even know if I was getting the right injection, you know what I mean? So there was those type of things. And I couldn't imagine what it would have been like for something as complex as what you were dealing with. And then again, dealing with all of those other factors involved. It's really hard to comprehend, to be honest.
It's really surprising how safe we are. There was, I'll tell you one quick story going back. I'm sorry, I'm going back.
No,
but,
please.
One of the tests was to see it was nerves. It was to see whether the nerves were working or not. So she was connected to all these electrodes and given these zaps to see what was working. They put the machine on us and said, "This is how hard it's going to be." And they gave us a zap. And that's going to be uncomfortable for her, but she'll be all right.
Yeah.
Then they put it on her, and I watched them turn the dial from 1 to 20. Come on, mate, I'm not blind.
Yeah.
I might not speak your language, but I can see what you're doing here. And then after that test, then they wanted to take an MRI, full scan. In MRI rooms, you're not allowed to be in the same room because there's all this electro, whatever.
Sure.
I've got photos of my wife just sitting there next to the machine with no safety kit on or anything.
Yeah.
We didn't know you're not meant to be in there. But on the way to get this MRI, like you can't take an MRI of a baby without them moving around.
Yeah.
And so you've got to sedate them.
Right.
It was a Sunday and the doctor had his day off, so he didn't want to come in. So he said, "Okay, you come meet me at my house." We turned up at this house. After we turned up at the house, he sends the nanny out. So he tells the nanny, gives the nanny instructions in Spanish, medical instructions in Spanish. The nanny or helper comes out to Golden next to the car, gives her a needle and says, "Give this to her, to Tallulah. Give this needle to Tallulah on the way to the hospital." And so how do I do that? It's like, "We'll do it at a red light."
My God.
So we're driving. Golden's telling me this story, and Golden can speak Spanish, which is great, but it still didn't help the situation. She explained to me, 5 minutes before we get to the hospital, we've got to give her this needle. We've got to either pull the car over or do a red light. And we both agreed that neither of us are going to do that. We just refused.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. But that was the instructions. That's the safety, the level of safety. And it was a misunderstanding. We didn't. It was a misunderstanding, which was we're thankful we didn't try and give her the needle. But when we got to the hospital and we went in to get the X-rays done, the MRI done, we told them the situation. We just didn't have enough courage to give our daughter a needle.
Sure.
And they said, "Oh, look, I'll do it for you." And they unscrewed the needle part and just squirted in the liquid into her mouth.
Oh my God.
It's like, we could have killed our baby with an oral. I don't know if that kills them. I don't know. Maybe I'm over. Yeah, but craziness.
But it just shows you sort of the precarious position you were in at all times.
Yeah.
You know, those small sort of almost benign, it seems like to us from a developed nation, you know, how close to disaster you are sort of at all times in a third world country.
Yeah. I don't know how to. I don't want to shun the. I don't want to say bad things about travel.
No,
travel's amazing.
Yeah, it's changed my whole perspective on things. So
yeah,
sorry.
No, it's all right. But it was super scary. You realise how little you know. When you don't have all of these safety structures around, all these facilities, all this free doctor to walk in off the street.
Yeah. So it makes you thankful, doesn't it?
And appreciative of their society must be just so resilient. They work on a different level than what we do. We're so protected. So I guess it ends up with we get on a flight from America. It only took, I don't know, maybe 72 hours to get on a flight in America.
Yep.
They dropped us into Brisbane, and that's when another level of panic is happening because it's COVID and you're bringing people, you're repatriating people. And so it's more army. There was a layer of police, and behind the layer of police was a layer of army, and everyone's hazmat to the hilt. You know, we're potentially bringing COVID into the country. So absolute extreme safety. And so we got ushered into a line. That line then led to a bus, and we didn't know where that bus was going. But each bus headed off in a different hotel, and we got put in a hotel for 2 weeks to do our quarantine.
Yep.
We arrived there, the hotel, about midnight. It took 3 hours just to get out of the bus because they have to process people. And that's when we took it was some relief. We had the kids. Yeah, we had the kids in bed with us. We just took a minute, and we slept. We were just exhausted. The next morning we fed the kids, and we looked at each other and went, it's time to it's time to get to the hospital. We didn't know how we were going to do it, but we contacted the police downstairs and said, look, we've got someone who needs to get she needs an ambulance. And so they're like, okay.
Had her condition deteriorated at all?
Look, she was a blob. So when you hold a blob, you've got to kind of throw her arms over your shoulder like they're a scarf.
Right.
That's where she was at. But she was still, functioning. Okay, she's breathing, eating, smiling.
Okay.
But she was panicked. She didn't know what was happening to her. So we got in the ambulance. We split up. Golden and Tallulah go to the hospital. I'll hang out with Finn in quarantine. That's where we took a breath of fresh air. Goal number 1 achieved.
Yep.
Get the help we need into the safety of the Australian medical system. That's the best place we could possibly be. It didn't mean it was going to make anything easier for us, because within 48 hours, a lot more testing went on in Queensland and Brisbane Children's Hospital, and they came to the conclusion they don't know what it is.
Right.
Their best guess is it's leukodystrophy, which is a very aggressive disease, and they said, look, what's the prognosis? And they said, look, it's really hard to tell. It's an unusual disease, but considering how quickly she's declining, it might be months. So now we're stuck in quarantine for 2 weeks, and this could be, that could be a quarter of our life.
Yep.
So we did our best. We're like, we've just got to get out of quarantine. We're going to make what time we have with her the best possible time we can have with her.
Yep.
And getting out of quarantine is not an easy thing to do.
No.
And we don't know of anyone who's ever done it before.
Not legally.
Not legally. But some people are from Darwin.
What are you insinuating here, Chris? I don't like where this is going.
So I've got to be careful who I don't use names here, but Darwin people are connected. Darwin's a small place, so we got the most help we could possibly get, and within 3 days, we were shown the door out of quarantine into a household quarantine.
Yep.
So here's a home, you're not allowed to leave. Same quarantine conditions, and we've got some high up people vouching that we're going to do the right thing, and so we're in home quarantine. It was pretty amazing with a whole bunch of really angry people stuck in quarantine that know that they arrive with us. Why are they leaving early? That was like jail to a lot of people.
Right.
And like, what are these people doing? I was like, oh, sorry, we're from Darwin.
Yeah. It sounds like you're connected almost. Like people have been pulling strings for you in Nicaragua. People are pulling strings. Who are you? Did you live? It sounds like you've lived a double life or something, Chris.
If you have a look at our website, you'll see our daughter's face, and when you see that face, you suddenly have a lot stronger connections than you ever thought.
Sure.
Well, we ever thought we ever had.
Yeah.
We had people wanting to help as much as possible, and that happens still today. We've been fighting this journey for 3.5 years, and
Bailey, do you reckon you could pull Tallulah's photo up on our Moon's Mission website. We'll just get that one up if we can. Anyway, sorry,
So we're home now all by ourselves. We're not in the safety of the hospital system, which is where we wanted people to come forward and say, okay, this is what she's got. Take these 3 times a day, and she'll be right in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
We never got that. We got really a really sad diagnosis. And so we just got on the internet and we just tried to work out, is there any cure in any place, any herbal, any medicinal, anything that might help.
Yep.
We just, we had to try and work out, let's try and divide it into, let's have as much fun as possible in the time that we've got with our daughter, but also let's see if we can find something that's going to help her out.
Yep.
And it was a juggle. Sleep really wasn't given any room in our busy schedule. So we did the best we can. We found out that there is 2 amazing treatments that sometimes have an effect. And that is, the first one is steroids. It works in unusual ways. It's like a last-ditch attempt. People don't know how it works, but it just works with rare diseases sometimes. Okay. Steroids and plasma. Plasma's freaky as well. It helps them in amazing ways. And pediatricians agreed, and neurologists, and we had a full boardroom of specialists trying to help Tallulah. Like we weren't we were looked after.
Lacking, really. You weren't lacking for support, which is quite amazing to me given the time period that this was all taking place in, because the world was melting down essentially, and it felt like medical resources were tapped out everywhere you looked. Hospitals were overflowing, people were dying, and we didn't really know where COVID was going to take us. It was like apocalyptic at that time, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got this. How rare is this disease? Do you in number terms? Do you think?
Okay, so leukodystrophy. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Because that was her first diagnosis, and after 4 months of this, we got a different diagnosis, and so our life changed.
Is that deflating when you think it's one thing, and then it's like, no, hang on, sorry, it might be this other?
Well, it gave us, before it was we think.
Okay.
Then after gene testing, they read all of her genes, and they realised that on her genetic helix, she's got 2 genes that aren't working properly. So out of 30,000, 2 of them not working.
Wow.
The same.
2 out of 30,000.
Yeah. So wow. So she was passed those genes from my wife and I.
Okay.
So what that means in my makeup, out of those 30,000, I've got 1 gene that's not working very well, and my wife has the identical gene that's not working well. So everything's all right with me and my wife, because we've got one doing the job of the other one. Everything's cool. But we happen to both pass down the faulty one. So I passed down the faulty one to Tallulah, and so did my wife. So, the geneticist, the first thing he asked was, "Are you brother and sister? Are you related anywhere?" Right. Because it's just so rare for us to meet and have the identical faulty gene. And there was 0 chance of that. But
in a weird kind of Providence type way, maybe it was meant. You guys were meant for each other because you were so sort of similar at a genetic level, like it was, maybe that's a way to sort of look at it. I don't know if that provides any,
Yeah. Golden's parents are from America. My parents are Australian, and we couldn't work out if they'd met any time. But there's a theory that you're supposed to, if you don't like the smell of someone, then it's a natural thing that your genes aren't a good match. That's a theory. And I sort of questioned, do I like the smell of my wife? And does she like it? But yeah, that was going nowhere. So the question is, was it a shock? Was it disappointment getting a new diagnosis? And in reality, it wasn't. It was relief because it was certainty. Information is power, and for us to have full certainty of what disease it is, that meant we can pursue not only what disease it is, but what the cause is.
Okay.
And it's a genetic condition. That's the cause.
Right.
It's not something that's not working. It's not something she's eating. It's not something she's allergic to. It's not. It's a gene that's not doing the job it's supposed to do. And so that's great. We were so relieved. Not only did we have certainty on what her condition is, but we also sorry, I lost train of thought.
That's okay.
Yeah, so not only are we certain of what the disease
is.
So
the new diagnosis is providing you sort of a bit more of a direction that you can sort of go down with research and therapies and that type of thing.
Yeah, we can do all the research possible.
Yep.
This is where your question is how many people. We found out that there was 22 people in the world with that disease. That's in the medical literature.
Yep.
There'll be more, but in medical literature, that's what it is. There might be other people that are diagnosed with or misdiagnosed with cerebral palsy, maybe leukodystrophy like us, but there'll be other people out there. But
but infinitesimally, like small amount of people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's what you're facing, and you're finding out what you're facing as well at that time.
Well, there's still a lot of uncertainty about what's her prognosis because there's such a limited pool of people that have it. So there was some relief that we know what it is, but there's also relief that we know it's not leukodystrophy and her prognosis is not months anymore.
Okay.
It'll be longer. But the oldest person we are in contact with that has the disease was 17 at the time.
Okay.
And he had a pretty light case of it. When I say light case, there are kids with about a third of the kids with this disease have neurodysfunction. Most of them can't walk. Some of them suffer from seizures and things like that. But this boy, maybe one of his genes is creating a little bit of the enzyme, so he might have got a bit of a lighter case. There might still be some production. So he's in a wheelchair, but he just he's our hero. He just represented the UK at the Olympics in disabled basketball.
Oh, wow.
He's doing really well.
Yeah.
He's our poster boy, but he's we're at a stage where we don't know the prognosis, but we do know we've now got more time. It's not months anymore. We looked for a cure. We looked for treatment options. There was nothing available. There's nothing. Just go home, love your daughter, and when things get too hard, bring her back to us for palliative care.
That's sort of what the doctors were telling you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that message, whilst sweet, I guess, I don't know what, but that didn't rub well on us. We're not going to sit by. We decided we're going to do everything we possibly can. For the last 3-4 months, we thought we had very limited time with her, and all we wished day after day was another chance, a chance of making her life better, a chance at giving her a proper a life that she deserved.
Yep.
And now this was it. This was our second chance.
Okay.
It's on our lap now. We've got a name. We know the cause of it. It's a gene. What are we going to do about it? There's 22 kids in the world with it. There's no one taking the lead to try and find something.
Sure.
It's got to be us. No one else. We can't wait for anyone. And so, we got our second chance, and that's where we celebrated. Yeah. And then the next question is how? How do you go anywhere? Where do you start?
Yep.
Where's the guidebook on how to create a medicine?
That's right. So who do you at which stage was this as well? So was this within months after coming back to Australia? Is that where you're at right?
It took 4 months after coming back to Australia, about that, for them to come back with a gene sequencing study.
Right.
And that's when the geneticist said, this is where it is. We've misdiagnosed you. This is the problem.
Yeah.
You get one of these genes working, they'll be like golden and I. We have one working, everything's going to be fine.
Wow. It's look, and it sounds, in theory, it's like, so simple, but I'm sure it is the most complicated thing. I mean, at that moment, where do you turn to? Is it, are you relying on the doctor that's just done this gene study as to what the next steps are? Or is there another process? Where do you go at that moment?
Yeah, we learnt a lot. We also learnt more about the function of the hospital system, and it's harmful to give false hope. For a doctor to give false hope, it's harmful. Mm-hmm. So to give any more than go home, love your kid, make their life as happy as possible, that's all they can really say. They can't say, head over to go and find a university and sell everything you've got, put everything you possibly can, bring in all your family and friends, try and get their help, and then try and see if they can come up with a treatment, a therapy, or a cure. And it's irresponsible.
Well, I think that's why a lot of doctors will come off as quite impersonal, and they get a bit of criticism for that because for this reason, they try to take the emotion out of that because it's potentially putting patients and carers of patients at further, through mental anguish and hurt.
Yeah, exactly. If as parents, if we break down, we can't look after our kid anymore. We've got to look after our own health. And raising a child or children with disabilities is really taxing on anybody. And so it makes sense that you go home, look after yourself and look after your kid. Yeah. It's really wise advice. There was some doctors even discouraged us from going down this path of trying to find a treatment or a cure. You got to look after yourself first. Yeah. And
I'm sure they've probably seen people go down that path too, right? And maybe just burn themselves out, and then there's sort of no help to themselves or their families. They
could burn their self out. They could burn all of their resources as well. So they've got nothing available. They've probably lost their family home. That's what we're doing right now. We've got nothing left. We're in debt over our eyeballs. But I guess we chose differently. Yep. My wife's very intelligent, and she's got a journalistic background. So she's great with communicating and helping, and she was sort of prepared for this. Let's start a campaign. It's got to be, we need help. We need to lean on our community. We need to pick them up and help. And she labelled it. We need an army for Tallulah. We need Tallulah's army. And I've got a business background, so I'm used to solving problems and trying to put things together. And so when we just tackled it. Well, let's do this. We're up for it. We're up for the challenge. And so that's where it began. Let's see who can help. We worked out the two options were to try to find an existing drug. There's 3,000 FDA-approved drugs out there. Let's see if one of those can help her. Mm-hmm. Because all drugs have different effects on the body. Sure. One of them might help her really well. Yep. So that didn't mean popping 3,000 different drugs into her system. Yep. That meant growing a colony of her cells, and then giving those cells the drug. They would take photos of the cells over time-lapse photos, and then they would use AI to analyze the changes in the cells to see if it would work. And it's like, great, that sounds perfect. Yep. Let's start there. Halfway through that project, we found out that if it works on the cells, we then need to work out if it's going to help her entire body or work against it. Yep. So we got in contact with the Australian Institute of Bio and Nanotechnology, and they had developed a system for growing brains. So they didn't need to take a chunk of Tallulah's brain and multiply it. They could just do it by taking a couple of drops of her blood, spinning that blood into pluripotent stem cells. Okay. That's about right. Yep. And then they could turn those cells into mini brains. Wow. So they grew colonies and colonies of her brain, my wife's brain, and another patient's brain from Singapore. And they had these colonies of brains, and so ready for anything that worked in our first project, anything that looked positive, they'll start to give them to the brains, which is more of an organism rather than just single cell,
right?
And to see if it's going to have an effect on her mini brain. And so like I'm business, sure, rugby player, surfer, zero science. My wife, zero science. And this is the world we've just launched into over the last 3 years. Our first mentor was the Australian of the Year, Alan McKay Sim. He was doing the treatment, testing the cells with some of the FDA-approved drugs. Yeah. He helped us so much, and he had lots of time. Little did we know that he was desperately trying to retire. He shouldn't have taken on this project, but he did because he loves kids so much. Poor Alan, the cancer got the better of him and he passed away through that project. Yeah. Like Alan, he was such a big brain, or even till his dying days, he was emailing us with things we could do and update us on the study, on the project. Just he'd done everything, achieved everything. He had the money he needed to have to retire comfortably, but he just kept working for kids and trying to better society with more remedies and more treatments. It was, we've come across some big personalities on this journey.
Sounds like it.
So we've got a whole bunch of brains going on over here. The Australian government loved what they're doing with the brains and how they could speed up the process of taking what looks like it's going to be a treatment and speeding it up using these brain organoids, so that if there's any way of speeding up medical development, it's worth a lot to our community. Sure. So they got behind it. They put $1 million into that, and they used Tallulah's disease as their project, I guess. So the Australian government got behind us. Really thankful for that. And they're still a huge part of our team. A little after that, we found out that gene therapy, whilst a lot of people were saying gene therapy hasn't come very far, so fixing the actual gene itself, it hasn't come very far. They've been saying it's just 5 years away, but they've been saying it's just 5 years away for 20 years now. Yep. That's what we were kind of being told. And then we came across a guy by the name of Terry Purivanakis, and he had a child with a similar disease to Tallulah, and he was on the path to injecting his son with the gene his son needs. And we thought, wow, we were told that gene therapy is not ready yet. It's just space age stuff. Right. And we got a hold of this guy. He helped us. He identified places that can do this for us. Yep. And Australia's developing one now down in Sydney. It's just coming, it's being built now. And we thought, wow, this is not a treatment, but this could potentially be a cure because it fixes the actual gene in her system.
So by injecting his child with a solution of some sort, it can actually fix a gene.
It can put the gene into his system that wasn't previously there. So
unreal.
Yeah, it doesn't work with all genes.
Yep.
Because some genes are just too big and the properties of some genes. But for his child and for Tallulah, they worked out that you don't need to try and fix a gene that isn't working.
Okay.
You just need to put a third copy right next to the two that aren't working, and that third copy will do the work of the two. So we got super excited about this, and that's where we turned our focus to.
Okay.
We were told, look, potentially this could be a cure for newborn babies with the disease, but Tallulah's not a newborn baby, so the damage that's happened is irreversible.
Right.
it's very unlikely that it's going to fix it. But it'll stop. Hopefully, it'll stop any further regression or progression of the disease.
Yep.
Regression of her. And so those goalposts, they're enough for us.
Yeah.
And so we went forward. We started a charity, Genetic Cures for Kids, and the aim of that charity was to develop gene therapies.
Yeah.
At the gene therapy hadn't been developed in Australia at that time. They've got projects in Europe and in America that we can follow, but they haven't started that in Australia for AAV9. So we kicked off that charity in the hope that we can somehow get a gene into our daughter.
Yep.
That's going to ideally just stop any further progression of the disease, and B, hopefully put her on a path that she develops a little quicker than what she is right now.
Right.
It's a big spectrum, and we don't know what to expect. But in one disease, the kids progressed really quickly. They started to develop really quickly. In others, they've just improved by about their development curve has increased about 20%. All of that's great. They've time and time again, researchers said just set your goal on not the disease, stop the disease from progressing. But we're optimists, we're parents, we're hoping that it's going to be a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So so we're on this. We don't know how we're going to do it, but we've got a heck of a purpose.
Yeah.
For raising money, for me to grow my business as much and as quickly as possible, and everything goes into this study.
So is this your business now, or are you still do you still have other business pursuits that you're using to sort of fund this, or how's that all working at the moment? So
I've got a business called Remote Workmate, and every dollar of profit goes into that into the charity, of course. And I probably in the last sort of 6 months, I've really tried to make that my number one focus in time.
Okay.
Time-wise, our time is super stretched between helping our kids being parents, but also helping with therapies and things like that with our daughter, and raising money for the charity, and overseeing 2 research teams that have 2 multi-million-dollar projects in science, which we don't know much about.
Right. So could you say the name of your business again?
Sure. It's called Remote Workmate.
And tell us a bit about what you guys do.
Sure. So at Remote Workmate, it's an offshore company. It's over in the Philippines. We help mostly American companies with their back office work. When businesses realize they can outsource a lot of that process work, then have the ability to hire bigger, smarter minds to grow their business and take a lot of that admin process work off their hands. So we've got we've got about 20% of our clients are in Australia, and the rest are in the US.
Okay. So do you have a website or something, or what's the best way that someone can, if they're interested in that type of thing, find you guys?
Sure. It's remoteworkmate.com.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Check it out.
And our that'd be great. We work on objectives rather than staff.
Yep.
So people come to us saying, I want this type of staff member. It's all right, let's run back a bit.
Yep.
Let's work out what objectives you want to try and reach, and then we'll work out the best solution for you from that.
So has your ordeal with Tallulah sort of shaped the way you're doing business now? Has it changed the way you approach difficult things?
Certainly. So a lot of my competitors are all about, let's see if we can fill a seat. Let's see if you want a staff member, you want a job title. I'm going to take that job title and just give you people who've done that job title before.
Yep.
We realize that if I'm going to have any success in expanding this as quickly as I need to expand it for the charity, we've got to be all about helping our clients. We've got to be all about aligning our objectives with our client objectives so that we can be as much help to them as possible.
Yep.
And we are the experts in offshoring, so we need to be in a position of coaching and advising, and not saying, give me a job description, I'll fill it.
Sure.
And knowing that that's a pretty shitty job and it's probably not going to last for very long, but that's what's happening in the industry. So my focus, my change is all about how can I help others to achieve their goals.
Yeah. So I guess, you said that your expertise in this, overcoming this ordeal is to, the skills that you can bring to it have come from a real business side of things, and finding cures and therapies, I'm sure, are extremely labor and resource intensive, financially intensive. How much of it is, how much of a priority is raising funds for it, and what's your process for that? Is it reaching out to other NGOs? Is it making a public ask? Is it approaching governments for assistance? What does that look like?
Yeah, funds come from. We were hoping that we might get a pharmaceutical company that supports this.
Yep.
Because look, we've made headways. We come in and support this, but the pharmaceutical companies are businesses, and they're not going to, unless you can make a viable business proposition for them, and there's dollars in it. They're not interested.
Because I imagine there's not a lot of money in rare
there's not.
diseases, is there?
There's not at all. And that was a lesson I had to learn, is that I had to stop analysing decisions from a business perspective of what's economical.
Okay.
I had to learn that this doesn't make financial sense from a business perspective to get behind, and even for the government to put too much money in. But the government doesn't analyse their grant structures like that. They see what's possible in the future. So putting money behind a project that's in ultra rare disease, it does a few things. We might come up with a medicine that's going to help the future generations of this disease.
Yep.
That's worth a lot of money. We're also going to advance science.
Sure.
And whatever we discover in that is going to be related to, we're going to be able to use in other areas.
Yep.
So we're going to make sure that we've got to sign everything away saying they can tell everyone as much as they possibly want.
Here's the process we followed, yielded these results, have at it sort of thing.
Yeah, and they saw that growing mini brains and testing on mini brains instead of going through the really long process of, okay, we've got something that looks like it works, but we need to test it. So we've got to grow some mice that have that disease. That takes a lot of time, and grow a population of them with the disease, and then inject them and watch them and see if anything's changing. And then at the end of that, all you know is if mice have that disease, whether it works or doesn't work in the mice. But how close is that to knowing if it's going to work in a human?
Yep.
This is using the actual patient's brain cells, and you can see whether it's working on the actual human brain cells or not. It's much more valuable data.
I saw on your foundation's website that you were talking about creating a replicable framework. Is that sort of what you mean, where it's like, here's what we've done in the past, you guys might be able to apply that to Tallulah's case, someone else might be able to apply it to another rare genetic disorder. Is that sort of what you're meaning?
Yeah, that's the replicable framework that the AIBN is creating, which is instead of spending that whole mice study, that's probably a year and a half to make all that without the best results in the end. And they can have brains, from a few drops of blood, they can have you grow a colony of brains in about 2 to 3 months. I could be a little bit out there. I'm sorry if I am. But really quickly.
Wow.
And the data they're getting from these brains is amazing. So Tallulah's brain, the medicine we've made for her, which is the gene, what we've had to do is work out how do you get a gene into the body and how do you get it to go into and embed itself in as many cells as possible. And the best vehicle for that is a virus, because that's what viruses do. They go and spread like crazy. And so we've found a virus AAV9 virus, empty the bad cells out of the virus and the destructive cells out of that virus, and put in that gene into the virus, add a bit of a driver in there, and that's what we're using. So we've got this medicine and we've tested it on the brains, and when you look at Tallulah's brain organoids versus mine or my wife's or a healthy human, and what you see is in a healthy brain organoid, there's a big spider's web of neurons and axons. But in Tallulah's, they're more like highways. They're not a big fan of spider webs. They've reduced themselves to just strict highways. Like, there's an obvious difference. Then we've got our medicine, and we've put it on these organoids, and suddenly they've recovered these damaged axons and neurons, and now we're getting that spider's web again. And we're told from the beginning, don't think you can recover. Once the cells are damaged, you're not going to recover them. And suddenly that's what it looks like it's happening.
Wow.
We're not allowed to celebrate that. They're like, hang on, this is only just in organoids. There's a long way from organoids to humans. Yeah. Don't get your hopes up too much, but it's really hard as a parent not to get your hopes up.
Just from what you've told me there, the applications, I guess, across medicine, if, these sorts of discoveries are made and could be applied to other ailments, it's almost unending. Particularly, say someone loses an arm, right? You can't grow that arm back. It just sounds like this type of thinking, at the very least, if not necessarily like a discovery is made, but like that sort of thinking that, hey, hang on, this conventional type of thinking where we thought this couldn't be done, where you can't repair these broken pathways, now we can. That it just must open so many doors to so many people and so many ailments across the world. Is that sort of the excitement that you get without trying to,
being non-scientific, the things that really appeal to me is the concept of from blood spinning it off into pluripotent stem cells. Got it this time.
Well done.
And because those cells are what happens between sperm and egg in day 1 or day 2. So when sperm and egg hit each other, that's what those cells are the things that make everything, your entire body.
Right.
So if you can start with those foundational cells, you could potentially grow anything.
Yeah, building blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what they did for Tallulah, and that's how they got the organoids made. They are currently making her spine from these pluripotent stem cells to test the medicine on the spine as well. But once you get the pluripotent stem cells, and then when you add, I really like AI and where it's heading in the sense for the medical world. So I've told you that we're testing medicine on the brain organoids, but those organoids still need to be analysed to see where is it helping, which medicine's helping, which isn't. But AI can do that instantly without us labouring over it.
Yep.
They'll be able to take photos, and AI will be going, this is the one that's working, this one isn't, this one isn't.
And you guys can focus your attention on other things where it's needed.
Yeah, I think that advancement in the next 5 years is going to uncover so many cures for like there's 7,000 rare diseases that have no cure, no treatment right now. We're chopping. I think that's going to really come down.
Yeah. Just quickly, just touching on the stem cell side of things. Have there been any kind of ethical questions get raised, or roadblocks, or people, potentially activists, saying what you guys are doing with this, say growing the brains, for lack of a better term, you shouldn't be doing that. You're playing God. Does that ever come into that conversation?
It hasn't directly, but when we found out about medicine, when we found out, doctors sent us home going, love your kid. And then we've found out there is ways of developing your own medicine. You just need to be resourceful financially, or just have the resources to create that money. So I even started reaching out to people who, like celebrities that I'm aware of, that they have, children with disabilities, and started saying, hey, there's these avenues for people with resources, but it's not that I didn't realize it at the time. I was so excited by the potential for some sort of solution.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that, there it is an ethical question for people. It's ethical consideration. Should you be messing with this? And also there's risks that come with it as well. Our daughter will be the first one to try a new medicine. It goes from mouse to brain organoids and to rats, and there's not much more
in between.
Yeah, it's a scary path, and there is in certain circles, and there's concerns there. Okay. I understand that.
Yeah, there's a bigger purpose, I think, involved here. Obviously, clearly.
Yeah, my wife and I are aligned. Mm-hmm. We have got a board of directors of Genetic Cures for Kids. Yep. They're all aligned. When we invited that board along, they're all professionals, as required in charitable boards. And we said from the start, here's some things that if you're not cool with, you don't come on board. And that there is my studies. Mm-hmm. There might be something bigger but there, and we might have the medicine could have an adverse reaction. Mm-hmm. We don't know this stuff. It is a clinical trial, but we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that the risks are minimized. Yep. And by creating brain organoids that are showing great signs of recovery. Yep. Not only that, we're doing safety tests, and we're just flooding them with the medicine, seeing if it's going to become toxic. If we just flood those cells with way more than Tallulah ever get, is it toxic? And it's not. We're doing lots of studies like that to make sure that we're as safe as we possibly can.
Well, when human lives are involved, I think that needs to take precedence over everything. So I think it's valid in my mind. But just in terms of recent breakthroughs, have there been any sort of things happen recently, and where are things at, and are there any sort of future, what's the next step or the next milestone that you're really looking to get to?
Okay, so our what I just mentioned about the axons being recovered, that only happened 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
We saw those studies. They were amazing. Our whole team was blown away. We're super excited about that. So that's really big news. The other big news is that we said that we've made the medicine, but what we've made is a version of the medicine that can be tested upon. So it's a cheap version of the medicine. To make the medicine ready for humans, it's got to go through whole new facilities, and everything's got to be checked and rechecked and checked and checked. And so to make the actual medicine is $5 million Australian. It's being made over in Weill Cornell, which is the largest Ivy League university in America. It's being made with them, and that's a process the whole process takes about a bit longer, maybe 9 or 10 months. We're at month 3 at the moment. Okay. We're at so we're just trying to fund that to get to the medicine that's ready for the kids. Okay. So it's not just for Tallulah, it's for other kids as well around the world. Yep. And so those kids who they're all families that are trying to raise money in Romania and Czechoslovakia and England and we've got other families all trying to raise money so that we can complete a project to make a medicine. Okay, so that sort of leads me into the obvious question: is how can people support what you're doing? Is it supporting the foundation? That's Our Moon's mission. Our Moon's mission. What's the best way for people to get on board? Even if it's just, I'm guessing can you just throw in $2? Can you what sort of contribution can people make? So $5 million is a huge amount of money, but hopefully we're going to get some money from the other families as well. And what happens is when the government sees lots of contributions coming in from the community, they pay attention, and hopefully that leads to bigger grants to help develop new developments like what we're doing now. So ourmoonsmission.org is the website. And if you go on there, you'll see our daughter on the front page and there's beautiful blue eyes that'll just hook you in, and And a lot of people have really wanted to help out just from meeting our little happy girl.
Yeah.
The Fireys in Darwin have just taken on a new recruitment drive. All of the new recruits, one of their first things they need to do is to, as well as a lot of training, they also need to go out in the community and raise some money for a charity. And they've nominated Tallulah and Our Moon's Mission as their charity. And so at Coles and Woolies or wherever they might be, you might see some Fireys, and they'll be raising money for you'll see a little girl, blonde hair, on their buckets, and that'll be Tallulah. But you can also go to the website, make charitable donations, reach out to us. We do love to support businesses as much as we can. Cube here in Darwin, they've been a huge support for us, so we come visit them when we come. Every time they reach their safety goals, they donate towards Tallulah. But we've got it's really our community has really helped us so much. They've done everything from lemonade stands, aid as in AIDE, to having rare disease days at schools. They all come in their stripes. We've had comedy nights. The Darwin community has been our family.
Well, Chris, I have a daughter myself, so the courage that you've shown throughout this, and my daughter in particular is only just hit 18 months old herself, so it's harrowing to hear what had happened to you guys when she was at about 14 months. So it really sort of resonates with me, and I just want to wish you guys the best of luck, and ask Territorians and anyone watching this to dig deep and support your initiative, because it's amazing work you're doing, and I think there's going to be massive implications and applications for other ailments around the world. So, mate, appreciate you coming on, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Bailey.
See ya.